Hey guys, what's going on? It's me, Will, and I'm back with my final video of 2017, and this is gonna be my yearly top 10 albums of the year. And I think this may be my fourth year in a row where I've been making this kind of yearly countdown videos. And in case you haven't seen the ones from the previous years, I'm gonna put a link here in the description to those videos. But for now, this is gonna be my top 10 of 2017. And I think I mentioned this in the video from last year, but I still think it's true, where I always love making these kind of videos because it kind of drives me through some of the great albums of the year, and it also reminds me that there's a lot of really great new music out there. Even though a lot of people like to say that there's no good new music nowadays, I completely disagree with that. I think there's a lot of really great new music. You just have to take some time and really dig into it and find it. That's the thing about new music. It takes some time to find some great new music, but it is out there. You just have to find it. So yeah, this is gonna be my top 10, and I'm also gonna drive through my 5 records that didn't make my list. So it's gonna be my list of my honorable mentions. And but before getting started, I almost forgot, I wanted to give a quick shout out to my friend and fellow VC member DJ Trish for sending me her yearly Christmas mix, and this one's called Christmas Groove 2017. I just got this in the mail last week, and I was actually listening to this during Christmas, so thank you very much, Trish, for sending this out. And great Christmas mix as usual from DJ Trish. Here's the track list in case you want to check it out, and I'll put a link here in the description so you can go ahead and check out Trish's channel. Thanks again, Trish, for sending this out. Alright, so these are 5 albums that were very close into making it to my top 10 albums of 2017, but didn't make it into the list, so these are my honorable mentions. Okay, let's get started with Courtney Barnett and Kurt Vile with their newest collaboration album called Lotta Sea Lies, and this one came out on Matador Records. This actually spent a lot of time in my top 10 throughout the year, but later on it went down to the honorable mentions. Great album by both artists. I like them both. I think I like Courtney a little bit more than Kurt, but this was a great mix and great album by Courtney and Kurt. It just didn't make it into my top 10 of the year. And let's move on to the next honorable mention. This is the Japandroids, great band out of Canada, power pop punk duo. They released a great album called this one's called Near to the Wild Heart of Life. A great album title, great album. Actually also spent a lot of time in my top 10 throughout the year, but overall at the end it ended up getting bumped into the honorable mentions list. Great pop punk album by the Japandroids, and didn't make my list, but I wanted to highlight it in my honorable mentions. Next, another great punk band, the Orwells, with their album Terrible Human Beings. I love the album title, I love the album cover. This is a terrific punk album, very influenced in music by the Pixies. They actually have a song in this album called Black Francis, the name of the singer from the Pixies. And this one came out in Atlantic Records. I also got a chance to see this band live. They put a lot of energy. Highly recommend that you check them out live, and this newest album, Terrible Human Beings. Next is the Queens of the Stone Age. They released a new album this year. Highly anticipated. It was in a lot of lists out there. It didn't make my top 10, but it was also very close. This one's called Villains, and it came out on Matador Records. I also got the version on vinyl with the limited edition indie rock or indie record store version of it that I showed you in one of my past videos. Great album. Didn't make it into my top 10. And finally, my last honorable mention. This is the newest album by CJ Ramon, one of the remaining Ramones. He released a great album this year. This one's called American Beauty on Fat Records. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started with my top 10 albums of 2017, and coming up at number 10 is the newest album by the Nashville rock and roll band Bully with their newest album called Losing, and this one came in on Sub Pop Records. I also got the record signed by Alicia, the lead singer of the band, when I went to see them live a few weeks ago here in Atlanta. Great album by the Nashville band. This is their second album, and it's funny because their first album that came out a couple of years ago in 2015 also made it to my top 10 albums of that year, also at number 10. And in this year they released their second album, also makes it to my top 10 of 2017 in number 10 as well. I love the style of music of this band in a way that they are very punk rock, but they also have a little bit of grunge and rock and roll influences. And I really like the voice of Alicia, the lead singer of this band, that reminds me a lot of Kurt Cobain in a way that she can be very melodic at some points, and sometimes she can also growl and scream. That fits really well in the style of the music of the band. Also really interesting that they moved on from a major label for their first album into an independent record label for this second album, and moving into Sub Pop Records. They fit a lot better in Sub Pop Records with their style of music in the Sub Pop catalog. So I really like the fact that they moved into Sub Pop. The album is loud, it's fast, it's angry, it's right up my alley. I love that kind of music. Great punk rock album by Bully, coming in at number 10 in my top 10 albums of the year. They have a song in this album called Spiral, which might be my favorite song of the year. Great song, let's check it out. Alright, coming up at number 9, we get the newest album by the New York pop-punk band Warriors with their newest album called Survival Pop. And this one came in on Side One Dummy Records. And I also got this record signed by Lauren Denizio, the lead singer of the band, when they played a few weeks ago also here in Atlanta. Great pop-punk album, and if you watch my videos, you know I'm a huge fan of pop-punk music, right up my alley. And I do believe that Warriors just released one of the best pop-punk albums of the year. Super catchy stuff with songs like The Possibility, super catchy. And I can't help to feel a little bit of nostalgia when I listen to a record like this, even though this is a new album that just came in a few months ago, and Warriors is still a fairly new band. Their style of music is very similar to the kind of pop-punk music that was very popular maybe in the late 90s, even the early 2000s, which I really like, and again, right up my alley. And another thing is that the lyrics and the whole theme of the album is also very positive. I really like the theme of the record as well as the lyrics, in a way that they talk a lot about surviving through tough times and coping with trauma. And the whole theme of the album is also very personal and very introspective, which I really like. Great pop-punk album by Warriors, coming in at number 9 in my top 10 albums of the year. Alright, coming up at number 8, it's another pop-punk band from New York, and this one is Diet Sig with their first album, their first full-length album, Sorry I'm Good at This. And this one came in on French Kiss Records, and I also got this record signed by Alex and Noah, both of the band members from Diet Sig. Great pop-punk duo. They came up with an excellent debut album. And when this album came out, you heard me talk about this record if you watch my videos when it came out. Initially it was at the top of my list when it came out of my favorite albums of the year so far. Later on it kind of got bumped a little bit into number 8, but it's still a really good album. great summer album. If you want, kind of like that type of album that you really want to listen to in the summer because it's just so upbeat and so catchy. Right up my alley again, pop punk music. And I also really enjoyed the lyrics of this record itself. I think Alex Luciano, the lead singer of the band, she does a great job at putting things into the perspective of the life of a musician, of a female musician living in a world that is dominated by men in the pop punk or the punk rock music world. So it's a really interesting lyrics. A lot of the lyrics are also kind of funny and self-deprecating. So I really enjoyed reading the lyrics and going through this album, especially in the summer. A great summer album. Super catchy stuff coming in from Diet Sick at number 8. This one's called Swear I'm Good at This. Alright, coming up at number 7 is the sophomore album by the Philadelphia band Kayenta with their newest album, New Kind of Normal, and this one came out on Plum Records. And I also got this record signed by the 3 band members when they came into town a few months ago. And if you watch my videos, you know I'm a huge fan of Kayenta. I've talked about them pretty much throughout the year. They're an excellent band out of Philadelphia. They kind of lie in between the range of indie rock and pop punk music in a way that can really combine both styles of music really well. Really catchy stuff in this record, especially with the song called Mesa, which might be one of my favorite songs of the year. And but they still keep that kind of punk attitude in the whole theme of the album in a way that, especially with the title song, the title of the album, New Kind of Normal, where they talk about it's okay to be weird, it's okay to be strange, it's okay to be an outsider, just be yourself, and it's okay to deviate from the norm. They kind of have that whole theme throughout the record, which I really like. They also talk a little bit about relationships and personal stuff, which is fits really well throughout the whole record. Alright, coming up at number 6 is the newest album by Ranaldo, of course, formerly of Sonic Youth, with his newest solo album called Electric Trim. And this one came out a few months ago on Mute Records, and I got this one on CD. And speaking of Sonic Youth, I know that also Thurston Moore, also formerly of Sonic Youth, came out with a new solo album this year as well. But I decided to include the one from Ranaldo in my top 10 albums of this year and my list because I was always very much more partial towards the songs from Ranaldo when he was in Sonic Youth compared to the other band members. And I don't know why I always liked his songs much better. I think it may be because I really like his voice and I like his lyrics. I always found that his voice was always very haunting and very nostalgic for some reason. And in this record, of course, you get all the Ranaldo songs, very similar to the style that he did in Sonic Youth. And he does something really cool in some of the songs in this record where he kind of is singing and eventually he breaks into this kind of spoken word thing where he just starts talking and telling a story, which is very interesting. It seems like he's always telling a story and doing some kind of narrative throughout this whole record. Excellent album by Ranaldo. He also has a very beautiful collaboration with Sharon Van Etten, an excellent song in this record. It's a song called Last Looks, an excellent album, and it closes in with a very catchy song called New Thing. The whole album is also very guitar driven and very well composed as well.
We're coming in for a landing. All right, here we go. You have to shake the flesh off to open up the body's door. You have to let the skeleton
Alright, so let's move on now to the best albums, or the best 5 albums of 2017. And coming up at number 5, this is actually a record that came out very early in the year. I think it came out either on February or March of this year in 2017. And for a long time, it was actually my favorite album of the year. For a long time, it was number 1 in my list, and later on it got bumped into number 5. But it's still an excellent album by the Washington, D.C. band Priests, with their newest album called Nothing Feels Natural, and this one came in on Sister Polygon Records, and also got the record signed by the band when they came into town a few months ago. And Sister Polygon Records is actually the record label that is owned by the band Priests itself. They like to release things DIY, which I really like because they fit in with their values of the band really well. This is a very political band, and the album itself is very politically charged. Lots of very political lyrics. They like to criticize a lot of things about the government and about consumerism. They, especially with the song Pink White House, is obviously very politically charged. But overall, music-wise, this is a very eclectic mix of music, which is very interesting because they combine a lot of elements of surf rock music, rock and roll, punk rock, and post-punk music into one album that, even though they combine so many elements of music, they fit really well, and it is really well composed. I really like the way that they composed this record in Nothing Feels Natural. I like the overall mood of the album. It is very dark, a little bit moody in some of the songs, like Nikki. I also like the very haunting vocals of Katie Alice Greer, the lead singer of the band, especially in the song called Lila 20. And some songs she can be very moody and dark and haunting, and some songs she can be very gritty and very aggressive in her way of singing. You can tell that she's very passionate about the lyrics in this album. And this album also had some of my favorite songs of the year, with songs like No Big Bang, which is a very anthemic song, and also with Pink White House, which is kind of like near the end of the album, where the album really reaches this big climax. And it's just an excellent album by the band Priests. I love this record, coming up at number 5. Alright, coming up at number 4, and this is actually the only artist in my list which I did not get to see live in a concert in this year in 2017. Everybody else I got to see them live except this one. And I really hope that she goes out on tour next year in 2018, because this album is really good. I'm talking about Juliana Hatfield with her newest album called Pussycat, and this one came out in American Laundromat Recordings. Excellent album by Juliana Hatfield. And you know Juliana Hatfield, she has been around for a very long time, but this album, even though it has kind of like that 90s feel, it still sounds fresh. It's a very catchy album with very interesting lyrics, very political lyrics, a lot of songs about current events. It's kind of funny in when you listen to this record and read the lyrics, because you can tell that she's talking about somebody in current events, or in politics, or somebody in show business, with a song called, or she has a song of course, about Donald Trump, and she has a song about Bill Cosby, and she has a song about Kellyanne Conway, and a song about Melania Trump. So she can be very blunt about her lyrics when she talks about some people in show business or in politics, which I think it fits very well in this album. And like I said before, a very big 90s feel in the style of music, extremely catchy song. My favorite song in this album is a song called Wonder Why, which is just a beautiful song where she kind of paints a picture with the lyrics of a scene in her childhood, when she starts describing things around her that she remembers when she was a child. Beautiful song.
Kitchen was an avocado green, and the
All right, let's move on now to the top 3 albums of 2017, and coming up at number 3, this is an artist that also made it to my top 10 list a couple of years ago when she released her previous album, Ivy Trip. This time she makes it to the top 3 with her newest album, Out in the Storm. This is Waxahachie, and this one came out on Merch Records. Great album by the singer-songwriter from Alabama. I can't help to feel that this is a breakup album. It definitely feels, if you read through the lyrics and if you listen to the whole record, a very deep kind of lyrics about relationships and angst, and a lot of topics about leaving, and a lot of songs about regret, I think. I don't know the story about what drove her to write the lyrics in this record, but it definitely feels like a breakup album. And what's great about this record is that even though the lyrics are kind of dark and kind of moody, the whole album is very upbeat and very catchy, which is something that Waxahachie can do very well, especially with her voice that always sounds kind of melancholic. I always was a very big fan of her voice. It fits very well with the overall theme of the album. And another thing that I really liked about this record is that Katie Crutchfield, or Waxahachie, she is stepping away from that lo-fi sound that she did in her previous records. This album is a lot more produced compared to the previous records, and I think it works really well when it comes to indie rock and this kind of music. Alright, coming up at number 2, I think this is an album that, in my opinion, anybody will love. This is a straight-to-the-point rock and roll album from Bash and Pop, with their newest album, Anything Could Happen, and this one came in on Fat Possum Records. I got this one on CD. And I also got it signed by Tommy Stinson, of course, formerly of The Replacements, now on Bash and Pop, when he came into town a few months ago. Excellent, and like I said before, a straight-to-the-point rock and roll album. No messing around, super upbeat, very catchy stuff in this record. I don't know anybody that would not enjoy this record. It's just so good, and like I said, just a very good rock and roll album overall. Of course, very influenced in the music from the Rolling Stones, very influenced in classic rock bands like that. Very gritty also. I like Tommy's voice in this record, especially in songs like Anything Could Happen and Unfuck You. Very gritty songs right there, and I think, in my opinion, this is a great album to listen to in the summer. Another great summer album, and this is another album that got to my number 1 of the year near the end of the year, and spent a lot of time there. And it kind of got bumped to number 2 right at the end of December. So it was very close to getting into number 1, but eventually fell down to number 2. But either way, an excellent album by Tommy Stinson from Bash and Pop. Perhaps some of the best material that he has released since The Replacements. It is that good. An excellent album coming in from Bash and Pop. Alright, and finally, my number 1 album of 2017 goes to an album that was just released a few weeks ago. And I think this may be the reason why I make this video, or why I like to make this video at the very last day of the year, because it really gives me a chance to listen to the records that were released late in the year many times before I actually make my top 10. And you might think, hey, you didn't get enough time to listen to the whole record. How can you choose it as your number 1 album of the the year. But I can assure you, I pretty much listened to this album since it came out so many times that I pretty much listened to it throughout the month of December, or the last few weeks of December, and I can assure you this is my favorite album of 2017. It is just that good. And I'm talking about the newest album by Lemuria, with this one's called Recreational Hate. It came out just a few weeks ago on Turbo Worldwide Records. Excellent album by the indie rock / pop punk band from New York. You heard me talk about this band many times in my videos and throughout the year. I love their style of music. This is the kind of band that what they do best is that they leave you wanting for more, and they definitely achieve it in this new record. It's a fairly short record. It only has 10 songs, but what they do is that once you finish listening to the record, you want to just listen to it again and again and again. It is almost addicting in a way. In this new record, they work with a new producer called Chris Shaw, who has worked with other bands like great bands like Weezer in the Blue Album, and you can definitely hear his influence in this record. Especially in songs like Christine Perfect, where they add or they use new sounds that they haven't used before, like really deep guitar solos. They also play some songs with a steel guitar and with horns in some of the other songs. But it all works really well. It's a very well composed album, and overall the whole album flows very, very well. Now the theme of the record is very, very deep. Lots of songs about relationships, lots of songs about family members, very deep songs. And this is another band that even though their lyrics may be very deep, very emotional, very dark in some points, the whole sound of the music is very catchy and very upbeat. So there's a little bit of a contrast between the music and the lyrics itself, but works very, very well with Lemuria. So a couple more things that I liked about this record are the technique that they use in the vocals throughout the whole album, where they kind of intertwine the male and the female vocals in some of the songs, which is a technique that they also use with the band The New Pornographers. It's very similar to that kind of style of music, and it works very well with Lemuria, especially in some of the songs where it almost feels like they are singing to each other. Very, very, very good technique that they use here in Lemuria and Recreational Hate. And finally, the overall lyrics of the song. Some of the songs are very, very chilling, very introspective and very personal songs. So lots of songs about relationships and family members. Especially in the song called Trembling, where Alex Cairns, the drummer and vocalist of the band, he sings about living in a life where he knows that he's not going to have kids in the future, and about not leaving any a new generation of in his family. So it's a very, very chilling song and a very sad song as well. But overall, an excellent album by Lemuria. I highly recommend that you check out this band. I mentioned it pretty much throughout in the whole year. I'm a huge fan of this band. All their albums are excellent, but in particular this one may be their best album so far in their careers. Again, highly recommend that you check out Lemuria with Recreational Hate. I'm gonna leave you with some more clips of this album, which is my #1 album of the year. But that's it for me now. That's it for me in 2017. Again, VC, thank you for watching. I've really been enjoying some of the countdown videos that you have made in the VC, and I would love to hear in your comments what you think about my top 10 and what you think are the best albums of 2017. Great year in music again. Thank you, VC, for watching. I'll be back in 2018. See you later. Bye bye.
I'm not a Stevie, I'm a Christy McVie. I feel the weight of the world. I find comfort in being second best. I can relate and I feel guilty. I can relate and I feel guilty. I can relate and I feel guilty. You make me a better living person. You make me a better living person. I take pills to make